Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Delta Report. I know I haven't done a show in a while, but I've been looking for some subject matter it's important to talk about here on the Delta Report, and this is very important. Week 1. So this is a theoretical talk on what it would be like after a nuclear attack on North America by Russia, or by China, or by North Korea. Week 1. What would week 1 be like? What would you experience? What would you see? Well, most likely, Russia's got like 1,600 thermonuclear warheads aimed at the United States of America. It's most likely, that they have their targets picked already. They know where they're going to strike. First priority targets are the nuclear silos out in the western part of the United States. Those are priority targets. And second would come infrastructure, and civilian targets would be a strategic nuclear strike on large urban centers. Probably would have multiple targets on areas like the Pentagon, because the Pentagon would be how they would disrupt our military. Multiple targets on D.C., multiple targets on New York. In fact, probably any city over 100,000 people would probably be targeted. But a city that maybe has 100,000 or 200,000 people would probably only be one target. Probably have one nuclear weapon allocated for that region. But a city that's got like 5 million people, different story. They'd probably have multiple targets. And why does that make a difference? Well, first off, if you're in that area, and say your city's got 100,000 people and it is targeted, and it's just targeted by one nuclear weapon, anything can happen between that nuclear weapon leaving Russia and when it finally lands. It could get knocked out of the sky before it gets there. And so you might not see nothing. Your city of 100,000 people might not have any nuke drop on it at all, even though you're quite a heavily, densely populated area. But I guarantee you, if you're in downtown New York, or if you're in downtown Washington, D.C., or if you live anywhere very close to the Pentagon, or those nuclear, or those silos where they keep the nuclear weapons out in the West, or a city like Los Angeles, you're going to be multiple targeted. So one of those nuclear weapons, if you're multiple targeted, one of those nuclear weapons will probably get through. A lot of them are going to be knocked out of the sky if there's a nuclear attack. So there's 1,600. I don't know how many of them get knocked out. Maybe half of them, maybe 3/4 of them. But there's such an overwhelming attack, the number of them would get through. Probably at least 50. So spread 50 dots out across the United States, mostly on the major urban centers. That's an all-out nuclear attack. So what would you see? What's it going to be like for you? Well, let's just say that the closest town to you is 30 miles away. You're a little bit out in the country. The closest fairly fair-sized city, say it's a city of, say, 500,000 people, but it's 30 miles away. So you're there, and say it happens in the daytime. So yeah, you see a flash in the sky. You get the notification on your cell phone about 15 minutes earlier. You're 30 miles away from the major city, and you see this flash off in the direction toward the major city, major urban center that you're 30 miles away from, where normally you do your shopping. You drive in to do your shopping, you see a flash off in that direction, bright flash. You turn your head the other way, and you feel searing heat on your skin. You drop down to the ground. You cover your face with your arms. And maybe a whole minute later, after the flash disappears, a whole minute later, or maybe even 2 minutes later, or a minute and a half, something like that, quite a little while later, it's quite a long time, you hear a loud thump sound, a hard thump sound, you feel your skin vibrate. That was the shock wave. But because you're 30 miles away, the shock wave wasn't that intense. It was kind of like a whoomp sound. Whoomp, boom. Rattles the windows and stuff. Rattles the dishes in your house. And you look off in that direction toward the major urban center. And you see this mushroom cloud way off in the distance. You look back behind you and you see a couple smaller mushroom clouds about 60 or 80 miles away in other urban centers to the south. And that one was to the north. And you know it's on. Go inside the house. Everything's fine. But the power's dead. You pick up your phone again. Nothing. Dead. You go and you get in your car. Nothing. Dead. Everything's dead. What do you do? Well, that's a person that's in a remote location, about 30 miles away. But what if you were in the city? Well, you would have got a warning on your phone, likely about 15 minutes before it happened. Now, to really escape the blast, to not die if you're in the city, if you're where, say you're in that city that was 30 miles away from the other guy, and he's looking now at what happened. He's 30 miles away. He's safe. But say you were right in the city. Say you were in the downtown core. And that was your uncle out there 30 miles away in the country. But you're right in the downtown core. You're a different person than the one I was talking about a minute ago. You're right in the downtown core of the city and you get this alert on your phone. Well, in order for you to preserve yourself alive, you have to get at least 2 miles in those 15 minutes when it comes on your phone. You have to separate yourself from that downtown core, and you have to try to make 2 miles distance at least. That's bare minimum to survive. 2 miles away from what's called ground zero, which would be the center of the city, the dead center of the city. If you were to put a pin on a map, the center of your city, you have to get at least 2 miles away. And at 2 miles away, you might not survive. To really stand a chance, you got to get about 4 miles away to stand a decent chance. Now, could you make those 2, 3, 4 miles in 15 minutes? Because you're at ground zero, you got the warning on your phone, you got 15 minutes. They're telling you on your phone, find shelter, which sometimes is not that easy to do. And everybody else is going to be thinking the same thing to get out of Dodge. The streets might suddenly become jammed with traffic. But let's just say you're able to get in your car and you're able to beat it before all these other people start to try to beat it out of the city. You're able to beat it out of the city. So, let's say you got 4 or 5 miles away from the downtown core and you're in your car and you're making your way out of the city, but it's stop and go traffic. The bomb goes off. Boom! Behind you. In fact, even if you're on foot and you're in the city, you know, there's people out there that can run a mile in 4 minutes. Every bit of distance that you can get away from that center or where that thing goes off is going to be to your benefit. But when it goes off, if you're only 3 or 4 miles away, you're going to experience a totally different situation than the guy that was 30 miles away. His skin didn't get burned. He saw the flash, he went to look at it, but he didn't look at it long enough to burn his eyes. He turned his face away, and he laid down on the ground. He covered up his arms until the flash was over. His skin's not really burned at 30 miles away, and his eyes aren't really cooked or anything, because it will. That flash, if you're too close, when it goes off, if you turn toward it, it will give you blindness. So now you're 4 miles away, and you're in your car. The bomb goes off. Boom, behind you. This is a different example. Because you're only 4 miles away, it's searing on your skin. Ah! Feels like you're being burnt. You duck down behind the seats of your car. And you lay on the floor behind the seat of your car. And it's just white, all the windshields of your car. And the light coming in is burning any exposed skin is burning. It's burning the back of your neck. It's burning the back of your arms, even though you're in your hands behind your head. It's burning. Oh, for a few seconds. And then all of a sudden it's over. The light starts to dim. And that took about 10 seconds. You're about 10 seconds in. 11 seconds, 12 seconds, and they keep about 30 seconds. Boom, it hits you. Tremendous shockwave. Because you're only 4 miles away. It shakes your whole car. It almost moves your car, the shockwave. And you can feel it reverberate right to the core of your spine. The shockwave is so strong at 4 miles away. But it's over then. The shockwave's completed. So you get out of your car, trying to ignore the pain on the back of your arms, the back of your neck, the side of your head, where the light hit you from the flash. And it's stinging. It feels like you've been burnt. And yes, you have. You've received burns. But you're quick enough to get your head down underneath the seat so your eyes, you can still see, but your eyes are still affected somewhat from it. A little bit blinded from it. But you're able to protect your eyes enough. Now, at that distance, you get the clock's ticking. You get 15 minutes. Now, at that point. The bomb's over. I mean, you're looking toward the city and you see this giant mushroom cloud rising up into the sky, higher than you could ever imagine. And you're only 4 miles away from it. It looks incredible. Bodies are going up in it. Because probably 400,000 or 500,000 people just instantaneously died. You got to get out of Dodge now. Because you're downwind. You got 15 minutes. And that cloud that's going up is going to come down. You ever heard the old saying, goes up, comes down? It's going to come down. It's going to take 15 more minutes to come down. You've got to get shelter now. Of some sort or another. It may be something as simple as driving a further distance away, because every mile now that you make it away from that center where that explosion went up, the amount of fallout that's going to come down will be less. The closer you are to that explosion, the more fallout there's going to be. So if you can make a few more miles, if your car will start, well, that might be an option. Now, if your house was 4 or 5 miles away, you could go down into the basement of your house to avoid the fallout. But you've got to avoid that fallout. Now, what is the fallout? You've probably all heard about that a lot. Oh, fallout. What is that? It's dust. If you took a glass or a mirror and cleaned it, and put it outside your house when the fallout's coming down and went out into your yard, you'd see this powdery dust on the mirror. Wipe your hand across the mirror, and you notice it's all this dust on your hand. That dust will absolutely destroy your hand. It will absolutely destroy the tissue in your hand where you wiped your hand across that dust. That hand now is nuclear contaminated. Anything that dust gets on is nuclear contaminated. That dust, for the first 4 days after the explosion, that dust is very potent. It's called nuclear fallout. It looks like a powder or a dust that comes down. In fact, that's what it is. The bomb blows up in the air and blows all that powder up into the air, and then it falls back down again. It's called nuclear fallout. That dust must be avoided at all cost. You need to separate your body from the distance from that dust of at least like 4 feet. The closer you get to that dust, the more that dust is going to radiate you. It's going to toxify you. It's going to kill you. And the dust is most potent moments after the explosion. It has a very short half-life. So you say, well, what is half-life, Glenn? Half-life is how long does it take for the dust to lose half of its potency and nullify itself of that poison. And it's only a matter of hours, the half-life on it. So the dust neutralizes itself. It's giving off energy, and that energy is radiation. And it neutralizes itself very rapidly. But if you're in it, before it's neutralized itself, it'll neutralize itself into you. And you'll get a dose of radiation sickness, which you do not want. So you got to get out of the dust. You've got to shelter in place. And if that means nothing else than finding a culvert underneath the road. You ever seen some of those big culverts? You know, you can walk upright inside the culvert. If that just means getting inside a culvert and finding an old sheet of plywood and putting it on one end of the culvert and getting in there and huddling behind the sheet of plywood deep inside the culvert just for a couple days, it can save your life. Even though it might be, you might be standing in 6 inches of water and no place to sleep. And you might have to squat there for like 4 days inside that culvert pipe. Still, you're out of the radiation. If it means making your way into a basement or an underground parking garage or anything you can find to get out of that fallout, that's what you need to do. So it's not hopeless. People out there say, oh, if the world ends in a nuclear catastrophe, it's hopeless. You might as well give up. No. It is nuclear war is survivable. You just got to understand how it functions and how these things function. As it's very likely that if Russia were to launch an all-out attack, that those 1,600 nuclear weapons they got aimed at us, maybe only 100 of them would make it through. No nuclear winter. And like I say, the fallout is only good for just a matter of days. 2 weeks, I think, and 99% of it's gone. Just in the first 2 weeks. It's just in the first day. It's cut right, more than cut in half, just in the first day. So fallout's only a temporary thing. So if you can avoid that by removing yourself from the fallout, and there's lots of basements, lots of ways to get away from the fallout. Even if you had nothing else. Say you just had your car, you couldn't find a culvert, you couldn't get into anybody's basement, you couldn't get nothing else. You just had your car. Well, just the roof of your car, the fallout lands on the roof of your car. It's better than having it on you if you were inside your car. And then you could lay your seat down and lay in your seat. And it doesn't sound pleasant laying in your seat for 4 days. But why you'd lay your seat down is you're removing your head and shoulders and making some distance between that and the roof. And the radiation, you'd probably have maybe 1.5 feet or 2 feet of distance between you and the radiation, which would be on the metal of your roof of your car. If you laid your car, after a disaster like that, your car's worthless anyway. So you could lay some Maybe you find an old sheet of plywood or some bricks or something on the side of the road or something to lay on top of the roof of your car before the fallout starts to fall, like in that 15 minutes. And then you're inside your car. Then you've got even more protection. You've got bricks and stuff and steel of the roof of your car and stuff to between you and the fallout. And so you'd probably be reducing your fallout by 80%. You'd still take a small dose of radiation, but you'd probably survive. Just that little bit of difference. The worst thing you can do is if it's raining fallout is to actually get out in that rain, especially if it's real rain with water and the fallout's in the water. Rain is the worst thing if it's raining rain and the fallout's in the rain. It's going to that would irradiate you so fast. And then you got to consider something else too, is time. With nuclear things, time is important. I'll say you definitely have to get out of the car for one reason or another, and you have to get out into the fallout. Limit your exposure by how long you're out there. Move fast. Don't stay in the fallout long. Time exposure. Time equals X equals exposure. And also, you can also limit your exposure by wrapping, say you got some plastic garbage bags. You can wrap them around your feet and ankles and bring them up around your pant legs and put some elastic bands on them before you go out in the fallout. And that way the fallout will get on the plastic. And then you can remove the plastic so that you don't contaminate your whole house. And you got to move fast. That's if you have to, positively had to go out into the fallout, which is not a good idea. It's a much better idea to shelter in place for as long as you can. Limit your exposure to the fallout. So this is during the first week. I'll tell you guys the truth, honestly. This first week show, I might have to do a second episode of it to talk about even more things because I'm not even getting hardly past the explosion yet. And what I want to do is I want to talk about things that you're going to encounter during the first week, the second week, do shows on that, the third week, the fourth week, that's during the first month. I have the first month covered, and then what the second month is going to be like, and the third month afterwards, after this nuclear. But I'm not even done, and I've pretty much done a show now, and I'm not even done just the beginning of this crisis of what it would be if we have a nuclear war. So thank you guys for tuning in. I just want to show you a couple things before I cancel off this show. And I'm going to do more in this series about what it would be like. But one of the things I want to show you is we were talking about fallout. And I want to show you the map here I know it's only small. Maybe I can get it to be a little bit larger. Let's try here. Yeah, that's a little bit better, isn't it? Of course, the darker areas where there's more fallout, and this is a map of the strike zones. And you notice the eastern coast is going to get a lot more attention, and the areas out in the Midwest out there where they keep the silos in California. You notice that there are areas in the country that have reduced populations that are not going to receive any fallout whatsoever. And you can see that probably the worst areas of fallout would be in around the New England area, in around New York and places like that. But you'll notice if you just look at one dot in particular, pick out one dot on the map, you notice how far the fallout goes away from just one nuke. And of course, in near the core of where the nuke falls is where the fallout is at the greatest intensity. In other words, the closer you are to where it is. Thank you guys for listening to this show, and we'll catch you again very, very soon. You guys have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.